tablet totally did not fall. There, it's back in its place. It won't fall anymore. But, we're starting Heisuke's route. And I don't know what to expect. Especially considering our round one was, in Kyoto wins. So, Heisuke has a one-up on everybody, even Sun and Sun. What the fuck? Well, let's see what happens. I have zero clue. Alright, prologue time. Winter 1864. In order to find my father with whom I lost contact, I, Chizuru Yukimura, visited Kyo. In that city, I bore witness to a horrifying secret hidden within a group called the Shinsengumi, the Fury, a creature with white hair and crimson eyes. Luckily, I was safe in the vicious clutches of the Furies by the members of the Shinsengumi. Because I had discovered the Shinsengumi secrets, it was proposed that I live with the Shinsengumi men, since they were also searching for my father. I'd heard rumors, well, whispers really, that the Shinsengumi were little more than a bunch of crooked ronin, but my life with them proved otherwise. Their commitment to protect the safety of Kyo made them the last of a dying breed, true samurai. It set them apart from those who only craved power. Amongst the men was Heisuke, who always seemed to have my back. Heisuke was the youngest captain, and he led the 8th Division. Since the two of us were closer in age than the other captains, we became quite close. However, in order to become a member of the Guardians of the Imperial Tomb, he had decided to leave the Shinsengumi. This faction, the Guardians of the Imperial Tomb, was led by a man named Kashitaro Ito. The Abano Koji incident was spurred on by both the Satsuma domain and their demon affiliates, and Heisuke had suffered a life-threatening injury. Then he was forced to drink the water of life, transforming him into a fury. At the time, the fate of the shogunate was threatened by the Sacho, which later culminated in an inevitable battle for the control of the nation. Thus began the Battle of Toba Fushimi. Heisuke served as a member of the Shinsengumi's Fury Corps during his campaign, but one thing became clear: he was more fury than man now. Unfortunately, the battle ended in favor of the Sacho, and the Shinsengumi were driven from Kyo. They set sail for Edo in hope of a new start. Alright, back in Edo. Toto or not Toto is the achievement to start his route? Really? Oh god. They had too much fun with the achievement names. After we had returned to Edo, the Shinsengumi had reconvened in Hanamoto's mansion, fashioning a new headquarters from the ashes of the old regime. These days, however, it was seldom that one of the captains wouldn't find themselves within its halls. Oh god. Hijikata-san had been filling in as the acting chief in Kondo-san's stead, the latter of whom had suffered a serious gunshot wound, so he often met with shogunate leaders. The yawns have returned. I wish the yawns would stop, but they won't stop so long as I have to keep taking place and doing things. Okita's tuberculosis was scarcely improving, and so he was bedridden in the hopes of recovering quickly. Nagakura and Harada were both often found taking new recruits out into the Edo nightlife, enticing them with alcohol and adventure before joining our ranks. Although everyone else had carved a niche for themselves in our new surroundings, the members of the Fury Corps were not so lucky. Rather, they were forced to remain within the compounds as a measure of safety for all of us. I had a feeling that such an order wouldn't sit well with them, and it was only a matter of time until their discontent manifested into something worse. I tried my best to keep from jumping to conclusions, but I had a lingering suspicion that the Fury Corps, under Sanansun's command, was just biding their time. I had to wonder, was I imagining things, or was this simply the calm before the inevitable storm? Inevitable. For now, the question was left unanswered. On one such day,
雪村君、少々よろしいですか?
What do you want, Sana-san? What is it? Sana-san has snuck up on me, and in my surprise, I muttered a timid answer.
確か君の家は江戸の外れにあるのでしたね。よろしければ私を案内してはくれませんか?
My house?
高堂さんは江戸にいた頃から幕府の密命で落ち水の研究を行っていたと聞きます。もしかすると君の家に羅刹に関する資料が隠してあるかもしれませんからね。
Even in this state, Sanon-san is a very smart man. Oh, come to think of it, if this led to an opportunity to make progress with suppressing the bloodlust of the Furies, or even being able to reverse the effects entirely, then Heisuke would no longer have to suffer. But could I truly take Sanon-san's word for it? 9 times out of 10, yes. Ever since our return to Edo, he had been acting very conspicuously. My immediate reaction to his suggestion was to cautiously eye what his intentions may have been.
雪村君、どうしたのです?
Well, firstly, I need to get approval from Hijikata-san to exit the premises.
本人がここにいればすぐに確認を取るのですがね。
He so adamantly thinks that that's the case anyway.
土方君は連日の会議でなかなか屯所へ戻ってこないと聞いています。
それにえ？
落ち水の毒を消す方法があるのなら一刻も早く手に入れたいでしょう。その方法を見つけ出せば東堂君を苦しみから解き放つことができるのですから。
Oh, so now are you fully aware that he's suffering? Sana-san's lips smacked as he raised a valid argument. Nothing would make me happier than being able to save Heisuke, as well as all the others in the Fury Corps, from the pain of their condition. But I had to listen to my gut instinct, which in this moment was a reluctance to travel with Sana-san alone.
どうかしましたか。悩むことではないと思いますが。
Well,
江戸の街並みも4年前と随分変わっちまったからな。途中で迷っちまうんじゃねえかって不安がってるんだろう。
that voice.
だよな、千鶴。
Heisuke! Wait, when did you get here?
それはついさっきから。三男さんがやけに熱心に話してるから出て行きにくくてさ。
Huh? Giddy? Giddy to describe Sun-on-Sun? Heisuke took pleasure in ribbing his comrade, then turned and spoke with a more serious tone.
つうことで、俺も一緒に行っていいか、三男さん。
Phone did a noise.
君がですか。
俺、この間江戸に来た時、高堂さんの診療所を訪ねてるから道案内できるしさ。
I believe Heisuke was referring to his most recent trip to gather more recruits. He must have dropped by my house in search of any trace of father returning. That was like 3 years ago. That's recent, apparently. What intrigued me was that his most recent trip hadn't taken place the other day, as he suggested, which led me to believe that he said it only to convince Sana-san on letting him join our group.
なるほど。ではせっかくですし、ご案内願いましょうか。
おう、任せてくれよ。そんじゃあ行こうぜ、千鶴。支度してこいよ。
Finally, we get to hear the name Chizuru again. Thank you, Heisuke. Heisuke possessed a charming kindness that made it impossible for me not to smile in return. Ah! Dan! Hi. Hi, Nova. After discreetly making our way out... Yeah, Dan, because you come in here with something new every day to say hi. After discreetly making our way out of the compounds, we eventually traveled to the outskirts of Edo, where my father's clinic still stood, albeit quite decrepitly.
This is Kodo-san's診療所ですか。長らく人の出入りはない様子ですが。
I'm fine. I did a 5-hour charity stream last night. That went well. I can't believe it was 5 hours. When was the last time I did a 5-hour stream? Satan. Non-streaky. Satan. Yeah, there he is. God. How strange is it that such a familiar place to me can become so different in a span of years? The front of the house, at one point well kept and teeming with life, became dilapidated. Weeds sprouted through cracked stones underneath piles of dead leaves. Sorry for having you come along to this, Heisuke.
気にすんなって。羅刹に関することを調べるんなら、俺も無関係ってわけじゃねえしな。それに。
Also in Diablo 2? Oh. Heisuke's tone became hushed, and he made a subtle gesture in Sana-san's direction with stern eyes. It seems Heisuke shared my quiet suspicions about Sana-san's motives in this expedition. Scattered around the house were dusty tomes that reference Western studies, sketches of human bodies, glass bottles, and other colorful mysterious vials. Why do we have mysterious vials in our home? Glass. The only substance capable of encasing chemicals that undergo extreme conditions as a result of Koto Yukimura's experiment. Why is this in the encyclopedia? Why is glass in the encyclopedia? Father's study, in particular, contained tall stacks of documents and books, none seeming to follow any sense of organization. Cutting through the dust was a scent with which I used to be quite familiar with, reminding me of my childhood when I would sneak into his study and receive a scolding. Yeah, we don't get to learn more about her childhood until either Iba's route or Yamazaki's route, and we already know half of it because of Iba. The other half is actually quite disturbing. But we'll get to it. Don't worry.
何から調べりゃいいんだ？前に来た時もこの家の中は一通り調べてみたけど、今回は目的が違うしな。
You peeked around the house?
あ、どうした？
Does that mean you went looking through my room, too? Porcupines? What did the porcupines do?
いや、入ってねえよ。つうか、あの時はお前の部屋の場所なんて知らなかったし。
Esuke. You sure about that?
本当だって。俺だって女の部屋に勝手に入ったりしねえよ。
二人ともふざけている場合ではありませんよ。もし羅刹に関する資料を見つけたらそこに置いておいてください。私が目を通します。
Oh. Well, it's a porcupine thing then.
おう、わかった。
Also, Sana-san already has a pile. While we were talking, he had a pile ready. Already. Jesus Christ. With that, the three of us tackled separate corners of the house in search of any clues we could use to learn more about the water of life of Furies. Amidst the frantic searching was the sound of pages flipping and rustling in these abandoned rooms. Strangely enough, I felt myself being taken back to the days when I'd lived with Father in this house. One of his habits was meticulously reading through his papers well into the twilight hours of each night. I had to wonder, where could Father be right now? Father. Just as the words escaped my lips.
千鶴、どうしたんだ？
Hesuke. Sorry, it's nothing. Have you found anything?
いや、それが全然。なんせここ本が多いからさ。
Looks like it. Say, where's Sun-san?
あっちだ。
Heisuke's voice was a whisper, and he signaled the direction Sun-san had been in with his chin. What then? Together we suddenly observed Sana-san in focus as he rapidly flipped through a thick, dust-coated pile of documents in the other room. I wonder if Sana-san's found anything useful yet.
わからねえ。そもそもあの人が何の目的でここに来るって言い出したのかもわからねえしな。
His real reasons. I was under the impression that he wanted to look for documents to help him better understand the nature of Furies and the water of life.
表向きはな。
Is this the direction we're going with this? Because I like this idea. We'll see.
だけど、あの人がどこまで本当のことを言ってるかはわからねえ。
Dan, we already had our round one, and it wasn't even in this game. It was last game's game.
三男さんは同じように羅刹になったぐらいで本音を明かしてくれるような人じゃねえし。
I suddenly felt a sense of dread bubble in the pit of my stomach that compelled me to grab Heisuke's sleeve.
千鶴。
This caught Heisuke by surprise, and he worriedly began to ask me what was wrong. I suppose he had developed an eye for noticing when things bothered me, so he wanted to console me. Or, you know, the fact that I actually grabbed his sleeve. That could also be a sign.
平気だよ。何があっても、お前のことは俺が守ってやるからさ。
Somehow, just the act of him comforting me was enough to soothe some of my anxiety. I wonder how he was able to do so. Whenever I found myself in a bind with Heisuke, he had a knack for calming me down. Was this feeling... I caught myself in contemplation when... Oh. No! The sound of footsteps came from the other side of the door. I recognized that silhouette, and I'm not happy.
なんだ、誰の足音だ。まさか行動さんか。
物取りかもしれません。東堂君、戦いの支度を。
おわ、分かってる。
Both Heisuke and Sanan-san gripped the hilt of their swords in anticipation for this mysterious visitor, and a few steps grew louder with each approaching step. Eventually, the door slid open. Please don't be who I think it fucking is. It was... I was wrong! Ah! There's only 2 people with that fucking hairstyle. Ah, Sen.
みんながここに来てるっておきくは言ってたんだけど。
You're waiting for me to say Satan instead of Sanan-san.
もしかして見間違いだったのかしら。それとも入れ違い？
That voice, it was Sen. Sen, what are you doing here?
あ、千鶴ちゃん、やっぱりここにいたのね。そっちは確か東堂さんと三男さんだったかしら。
ああ、あの時は世話になったな。
I'm so happy that Sen is in this. We need so much more Sen everywhere. Also in the spin-off series where it takes place in modern day, holy hell, I love her design. It's just but I can't show it at the moment.
君は確か鬼の姫と名乗っていた少女でしたか。ここに一体何の用です。
あなた方に伝えなきゃいけないことがあるのよ。だけどその前に、千鶴ちゃん、あの後どうだった？風間に変なちょっかい出されてない？
It has a modern day spin-off, and it's set in high school because of course it would be. But there's only one translation of it, and it's a fan translation, so we could get to it one day. But I already promised people that after I'm done with my whole research and we go through the jank version of this game, we're doing Cyberpunk. Oh, yeah. For now, at least, he hasn't bothered me since our arrival in Edo. Look, if we're doing cyberpunk, we have to choose between two particular characters. We have to pick between Angel or Renzo. Those are the conditions. All I know about cyberpunk is the goddamn talking gun. That's it.
そう、それならよかったわ。意外と物分かりがいいのね、あいつ。
Ah, that's a talking gun. Also, Kazuma having sense in his head? No, he's as thick as fucking rocks. Ugh. Well, now you have. So, what brings you here?
あ、そうそう。実はね、お菊に調べてもらったのよ。西洋から渡ってきたあの忌まわしい薬、落ち水や羅刹のことをね。
The moment Sen brought up the serum, it seemed all of us became clenched tensely in the room.
なかなか興味深いお話を伺えそうですね。聞かせてもらいましょう。あの薬は一体何なのです？
落ち水はもともと私たちこの国の鬼とは似て非なる生き物。遠くフランスの地より渡来した西洋の鬼の生き地と言われているわ。
Oh, that's new information to me. So the water of life has demon blood from France? Alright, okay, so we knew it was of European descent, but we didn't know from where. But France is now a location. Alright.
ってことは、異国にもあんたらと同じ鬼の一族がいるってことか。
厳密には同じじゃないけどね。負った傷がすぐ治ったり、人をしのぐ体力や素早さを持ってるのは日の本の鬼と同じだけど。
God damn it, Dan.
私たち鬼は日の光を意味嫌ったり、人の血を求めたりはしないもの。
Oh, now it's starting to click my head.
そして西洋の鬼は自分の血を人間に飲ませることで仲間を増やすことができるみたいね。
つまり羅刹が日の光に弱くて血に狂ったりするのは落ち水が失敗作だったからじゃなく。
So the water of life has the blood of vampires of the west of France. Is that what she's trying to say then? Because now that makes a whole hell of a lot of sense. And why are we figuring this out in Heisuke's route? I have now learned things that I didn't know before.
西洋の鬼がもともとそういう生き物だからなのか。
そういうことになるわ。
Yeah, that makes so much sense now. Neuron activation. When Zen had first told me of demons, my reaction was not unlike how Heisuke's was in this moment. But what she had just described to us seemed like something else entirely. A fairy tale, written and told in the interest of scaring young children. I saw them, though. The Furies. How many of them transformed right before me. How their eyes became red once the thirst for blood began to consume every fiber of their being.
なるほど。実に興味深い。
Hey, Sanan, you want to go on a trip to Europe? You might have fun over there.
つまり我々羅刹となった者の血を人間に飲ませればそのものを羅刹へと変えられるというわけですか。
Oh. And now with that information, oh, I am so glad we resisted in Okita's route. Oh, so glad about that.
ある意味あなた方鬼の一族よりも優れた生き物と言えるかもしれませんね。
Hi, Isaac!
バカなことを言わないで。人間の体を無理やり私たち鬼と同等の生き物の体へと変えてしまっているのに。
Yes, I have been told that. I will absolutely play it before we get to actually stream Cyberpunk. Why is it on by default is my question.
心だけ人のままでいられるはずがないでしょ。身の丈に合わない力の代償は高くつくわよ。
吸血衝動のことでしょう。それは無論存じていますよ。
それだけじゃないわ。あなた方もよく知っている通り、羅刹と化した者は鬼とほぼ同等の力、そして治癒力を得る。だけどその土台はあくまでも人間の体のままなのよ。
何が言いたいのです。回りくどい物言いは感心しませんね。
生来の鬼と違い、人の脆弱な体では鬼が持つ強大な力に耐えられない。その代償はあなた方自身の寿命で払うことになる。
And there's the catch.
羅刹として力を振るうたび、あるいは傷を治癒するたび、あなた方の命はどんどん削られていくわ。
What? I was slack-jawed. I found myself perplexed in trying to sift through the meaning of what Sin had said. I'm not willing to test Twitch with the settings of Cyberpunk.
命をってことはまさか。
Suddenly it all clicked. If what Sen had said was true, then borrowing time from their future selves meant... What does that mean for Heisuke and San? Sen's shoulders shook as she was startled by my outburst. At first she gasped, hesitant to answer. Eventually...
幕府が行った実験では、力を使い切った羅刹は一人の例外もなく灰のように崩れて消えてしまったそうよ。
As Sen's revelation came to light, I was left speechless. No matter how many times I replayed the words in my mind, I struggled to grasp what they had meant. Turned to ash. Who could she have been referring to? But who is she referring to? No, I don't. I don't have them written anywhere. I can give them to you later, though. Heisuke and Sana-san? No. An icy shiver ran down the length of my spine.
なんだよそれ。俺も三男さんももうじき死んじまうってことか。しかもただ死ぬんじゃなか灰になって消えちまうって。
信じられないのも無理はないけど、忠告だけはしておこうと思ったの。少しでも長く生きたいなら羅刹の力なんて使うべきじゃないわ。
ご忠告痛み入りますよ。
I found it rather peculiar that Sanan-san was stone-faced in response to Sen's warning. Maybe he was unconvinced, or even slightly skeptical. skeptical. Oh god, words. His eyes thinned, scanning Sen from head to toe. After an awkward pause, Sen turned to face me.
このことについてはお菊に頼んでもう少し詳しく調べてもらうつもりだけど、みんなは今どこを拠点にしてるの？
Okay. For the moment, we have rented a mansion owned by one of the Hanamonos. I don't think we would be difficult to locate if you asked for directions for the Shinsengumi headquarters.
そう。それじゃあ何か分かったらそっちに知らせるわね。あなたももし私に何か用事があれば松本先生を通じて知らせてちょうだい。
What do you mean Matsumoto Sensei has your, well, I guess calling, whereabouts, locations? How did that happen, Sen? Matsumoto Sensei? Are the two of you acquainted, Sen?
行動さんの行方を探している時に知り合ったのよ。
Alright, okay, I accept this answer.
幕府や諸藩の高い位についている人は私たちの存在を知ってるって言ったでしょ。
Oh yeah, that also makes doubly sense. Valid points, lady.
松本先生は将軍校の御殿医を務めていらっしゃった方だし、知り合うつてはいくらでもあるわ。
Shogunate doctor, one of the many medical professionals under the employ of the Tokugawa shogunate, who were proactive in seeking alternative methods to health treatment. I see. What a small world, I muttered to myself. It comforted me somewhat knowing that I could summon her assistance if the time ever came when I'd need it.
それじゃあ私はこれで。また会いましょうね、千鶴ちゃん。
With that, Sen left us. After her departure, I glanced over at Sanan-san and Heisuke, whose expressions bordered on catatonic. An understandable reaction, to say the least. Surely they still had been processing Sen's somber news.
決め手となる資料を見つけることはできませんでしたが、ある意味価値のある情報を得ることができましたね。
Sanan-san's words were chilling, and he spun around on his heel to turn his back to us before marching away. Sanan-san, where are you going?
先に帰らせてもらいます。これ以上得られるものはなさそうですし、少し考えをまとめたいですからね。
Without another word, Sanan-san hurried out of the building. Only Heisuke and I were left in the house. Sen's cautionary omen struggled to leave me.
羅刹として力を振るう旅、あるいは傷を治癒する旅、あなた方の命はどんどん削られていくわ。
Each usage came at the cost of another day, another week, or perhaps months of their lives. In the back of my mind, I only hoped that Heisuke hadn't taken the words too harshly. The thought made me nervous, scaring me into avoiding looking him in the eye. I stared nervously at the ground. Suddenly, I felt a soft hand rest itself upon my shoulder.
そんな顔すんなって。知りたくねえこともあったけど、いろいろ分かったし、一歩前進ってとこだろ。
But doesn't it scare you, Heisuke? If what she said was true, then soon you and Sanan-san will be...
そりゃまあ、怖くねって言えば嘘になるけど。でも、この力がなければ俺、とっくに死んじまってた人間だし。それにさ、力を使いすぎなければもう少し生きられるってことだろ。 ならこの先力を使わなきゃいいだけの話じゃねえか。なあ。
Heisuke's tone was hollow, giving me the impression that not even he believed the words he was saying. The threat of war looming in the horizon was no secret to either of us, and when that day came, Heisuke would have no choice but to use his powers. He would only be delaying the inevitable before his flesh turned to ash and was whisked away with the wind.
おい千鶴、元気出せって、ほら。
What should I tell him? You don't have to put up a front. Heisuke, you don't have to put up a front.
俺別に無理なんて。
Yes, you are. It's hard enough for me to see you feign a smile through all of this. I looked deeply into his eyes. Hidden behind his wide, bright eyes, I could see his confusion and anxiety festering, lurking underneath. Hi, Nova. It's been good. There was no way he wouldn't have been afraid. Death was frightening enough, but having your death be premeditated was another prospect entirely. I know there isn't much I can do for you, but all I ask is that you be honest with me. If you're ever having a hard time, please let me know. Oh yeah, it is Father's Day. Well, I did my father a favor by doing his job for him. I did his work. I did his work at work today. I'm gonna ask for at least $10 because I had to do something in the kitchen I hate doing. The last thing I want is for you to feel like you have to act tough for my sake, so please. Wait, I forgot what Father's Day? Heisuke tepidly dug his teeth into his lips, offering a half-hearted smile once more, but then... Oh, that's because I technically have 2 Father's Days? Because I'm Hispanic, so for me it's like yesterday. Also, my dad had work, so I don't see him. He has different work to the work I just did, so meh.
ありがとな。そんな風に言ってくれて。
We made him happy.
でも無理すんなって頼みだけは聞けねえよ。俺見えっ張りだからさ。無理でも強がりでもやっぱほ。
What was that, Heisuke? God, I wish I had a paycheck. Oh, I wish I had a paycheck, but did you know I have a merch store?
じゃなくて、お前の前だとどうしても格好つけたくなるんだ。
Right, Heisuke, you have a habit of showing off in front of me. Yeah, sure. Heisuke. Even when confronted with the sobering reality that he could die at any moment, he still forced a smile. But this smile resonated a little differently to the one he had shared with me only moments earlier. Perhaps he had accepted it with far more humility and goodwill than I was willing to give him credit for. I've never seen Food Wars. You know, I just wish you'd let your guard down in front of me, but you aren't gonna do so, are you?
そういうこと。それからお前何もできねえって言ってたけど、そんなことねえから。俺はお前がこうやってそばにいてくれるだけで十分嬉しいし、本当にありがとな。
Watching Heisuke express such animated praise for me made my heart sink a little heavier in my chest. The precautious circumstances he'd found himself in mattered little in comparison to how he may have interpreted my feelings were about the situation. A brisk, chilly wind befitting the end of the wintry season blew nimbly outside of my old home.
お前寒くねえか？
But I'm fine. It seems like the winter will be here to an end soon. Will be coming to an end soon. It's almost spring.
春か。去年の今頃って何してたっけ？
Oh, is Haruka spring? Ooh, if it is. I gave my OC for this series a very interesting name compared to her character. Oh god. I think. You have a game proposal? What?
ああ、思い出した。伊藤さんたちと一緒に離隊したのがちょうど桜の時期だったっけ？たった1年前の話なんだよな。
Heisuke's eyes thinned, and he let his gaze wander up towards the overcast sky. The memory of Heisuke's departure was one that I wasn't exactly eager to revisit. It shattered me to think that our farewell might have been the last time either of us would see or speak to one another ever again. Hell no! I'm not doing horror games. Horror games are off the fucking table. And that wasn't all. Heisuke nearly died during the Abura no Koji incident, and it took the water of life to resurrect him as a fury. Would Heisuke live long enough to welcome another spring beside me? I am not doing a horror game. As I became aware of the morbid thoughts swirling tirelessly in my head, I shook my hands to distract myself.
どうした？
You can suggest other things and see if I'll say yes. What do you mean?
いや、なんか落ち込んだ顔してたからさ。
Well, nothing. It's just nothing. I'm just a little distracted is all. After everything that happened today, I'm still a little scatterbrained.
別にお前が悩むことじゃねえんだぞ。俺たちが羅刹になったのはお前のせいじゃねえし。
Heisuke might have seen it that way, but it was my father that exposed this evil, the water of life, to the Shinsengumi all those years ago. So, it wasn't as if it didn't concern me entirely. That'll never happen.
さて、もうすぐ夜が明けちまうし、そろそろ豚書に戻るか。
That'll never happen. How much what? What? No! I said never! You're right. I took a last long look outside as the wind grazed my cheeks, and I prepared for the long trek back. Yeah, no, I'm never playing a horror game. Nova, you're trying real hard to get me to play a horror game. It's not gonna happen, buddy. I'm sorry. Okay, ready to leave? You sure you didn't leave anything behind here? Heisuke?
いや、あのさ、今ちょっと考えたんだけど、さっき千姫が言ってたろ。羅刹は力を使い尽くせば灰になるって。
I believe so.
三男さんが羅刹になってからもう3年は経つはずだよな。それなのにあの人の体に異常が出てねえのはおかしいと思わねえか。
Now that you mention it, Sun had used ample opportunities to use his fury powers in battle throughout these last few years, even going so far as to cross blades with Kazuma. And yet, his body seems to have suffered none of the effects described by Sen, nor does he seem fatigued or affected by his bloodlust. Do you think that what Sen said was wrong?
それはどうかわからねえけど、実際吸血衝動の方は起きて。
This is gonna be round 2, isn't it? Hey, it's round 2. Heisuke cut himself short and suddenly he was bent over, groaning in agony. Heisuke, what's wrong? From his forehead dripped thick beads of sweat, and Heisuke clasped his hands tightly around his throat. Hang on, I've seen this before. It must be...
そうすればなんとかってやつか。
I had one choice. I had to. And say it with me now. Give him blood. Without a second to think, I unsheathed my kodachi and slid the cold, sharp blade across my wrist. Things happened, Nova. Basically, yeah, that's kind of it. Yeah, sort of, yeah. Basically. In the shortest way possible that I can explain it. I watch a hot stream of blood ooze slowly from the fleshly split wound. They're vampires but humans, so limitations and... there's a lot to explain, damn it. Heisuke, drink my blood. I fought back the urge to focus on how much it stung, and I hastily offered my forearm to Heisuke. Something like that, yeah. By this time, Heisuke had dropped to his knees, and he ravenously grabbed a hold of the bloody arm. I felt a chilling sensation as his tongue made contact, followed by the warm pressure of his eager sucking. Really could have used any other words besides sucking, you know that game? No, I'm okay. Just please, drink as much as you need, until you feel better, Heisuke. Suddenly, Heisuke's tongue started to lap along the length of where I'd made the incision. The wound was tender, and with each moist touch of Heisuke's tongue, I felt a sharp tingle. However, if this was what helped Heisuke get through these terrible symptoms, then all that mattered was that his thirst was quenched. The rhythm of his heavy breathing steadied with every deep gulp of blood he took, and I watched in fascination as drops of blood trickled gently from his soft cheeks. Eventually, sanity returned to his desperate eyes, and his pupils came back into focus from their dilation.
ごめんな、千鶴。
Yeah, there's a lot of spice in this game. In these two games, actually. There's nothing to apologize for. My body heals cuts really quickly. If it does anything at all to soothe your pain, then that's all that matters to me.
そんな言い方するなよ。すぐ治ったって痛いもんは痛いだろ。
Heisuke looked disturbed by my attempt at reassuring him, but even so, I knew this to be one of the few things I could do for Heisuke in these trying times. But in the back of my head, I knew that telling this to him would only do him more harm. A few days later, to mitigate rising tensions from the Imperial Army, the Shinsengumi became the Koyo Regulatory Company, a rebrand to protect the group from needless provocation. This renaming came at the order of the former shogunate, along with an order to protect the Kofu castle. After a long absence, Kondo-san had finally returned to the compounds. While everyone geared up for the expedition to Kofu, the Fairy Corps was ordered to remain behind as their recent actions had garnered some scrutiny. For many warriors, this expedition was their first ever opportunity to gain merit on the battlefield. However, for some of the veterans, this order only reminded them of the truth, that war was ugly, and each expedition brought the threat of losing more allies. This was the first time our men had seen a large-scale battle since the Battle of Toba Fushimi, a fact which brought me great anxiety. On one of the nights leading up to our departure, Hijikata-san summoned me to join the men in the hall, so I finished my chores and made my way there. As I walked closer to it, I heard the buzz of growing commotion on the other side of the sliding doors. Oh, this has to be what I think it is, isn't it?
やっぱりこの格好変じゃね？すっげえぴったりして窮屈だし。
Was that Heisuke's voice? I wonder what could be suffocating him. Hijikata-san, this is Yukimura. May I come in?
Oh, 入れ。
After verifying his approval, I slid the door open. To my surprise, it was something entirely unexpected.
お、千鶴、見てくれよこれ。やっぱりこの格好おかしいよな。
And now we cry because we never got to see Heisuke with his hair fully down. Damn. Makes me sad, because now it's short. Not that Heisuke doesn't look absolutely fucking cute with his haircut this short. I just really wanted to see him with his hair down for once. At first, I barely recognized the man standing in front of me. I gasped, dumbfounded by the sight.
おい、千鶴、聞いてんのか？
I mean, his voice was Heisuke's and his height was Heisuke's, but did we have to specify the height? Was this really Heisuke?
なんだよ、呆れられちまってるじゃねえか。やっぱりこれ変だって、土方さん。
ごちゃごちゃうるせえな。そんなもん一日もありゃ見慣れるだろうが。
そもそもなんでいきなり様相にしろなんて言い出したんだよ。今日にいた頃は散々上位上位って言ってた土方さんがさ。
銃を扱うにはこっちの方が便利だからな。
Yeah, shooting a gun with a kimono, probably not the brightest idea.
それじゃ俺和装のままでもよかったんじゃね？
You missed the suck, Dan. You missed round 2.
曲げまで切られてすっげえかっこ悪くなっちまったみてえだしさ。
Dan was devastated. Heisuke glanced over at me indignantly, raising his voice at the visibly irritated Hijikatsu-san. Huh? Me? Wait, no. I wasn't reacting that way because of what you're wearing.
本当かよ。驚いた顔のまま固まってたじゃねえか。
Yeah, you missed the spice. Wait, we don't say spice in this channel. We say tea. We don't say spice, we say tea. Well, I mean... tea. Heisuke's new hairstyle flattered his features in a manner I was unused to seeing. It was... so short. Oh my god. Can we please have a moment of silence for the loss of Heisuke's long hair that we never got to see down? Alright, on with the show. So, dare I say, charming.
なんか言ったか。
As I mistakenly blurted out my train of thought, my and Heisuke's eyes met. They cut his hair! They cut his hair, damn it! And we never got to see how long his hair was when it was down. Damn. Anyway, I'm gonna read this sentence again because I fucked it up. As I mistakenly blurted out my train of thought, my and Heisuke's eyes met, and instantly my cheeks started burning up. Nandamanai. You look very handsome. I felt like a lump formed in my throat, reducing whatever I wanted to say to incoherent babble. Babble. I averted his gaze, knowing my cheeks were rosy.
そっか。まあお前がそう言うならしばらくこの格好でいてもいいか。
He's like 24! I think he's 24 or 25 at this point. Nah.
筒袖の品定めは後にしろ。お前らを呼びつけた理由は別にあるんだからよ。
Here's the thing. One, he's short. He's short. He is the youngest captain in all of the Shinsengumi. That's why everybody often picks on Heisuke. 9 Nova? What the fuck?
ああ、そういやそんなこと言ってたっけ。
That would be the age when we first made him, so in 1864. And it's now 1868.
で、何なんだ要件って。
甲府での戦いについてだがな。もしかすると負け戦になるかもしれねえ。
A lost cause? Wait. Wait, what's the good number? I'm confused. Don't you think it's a little early to call, especially considering you have yet to fight? Oh! Don't worry, we'll get there, I think. Maybe. I don't know. That depends where this route went. Yeah, I saw. By the way, I am 1 inch shorter than midget.
どんだけ戦力差があっても絶対勝てるなんてことはねえよ。負けた場合の備えを万全にしておきてってことだろ。
Yeah.
平助の言う通りだ。城を先に取ることができりゃ負けはねえはずだが。
Nova, would you like to make friends with the lava pit? It is hungry, after all.
戦に絶対なんてことはねえからな。
Well, you can make friends with Corn and Amongram. Suddenly, the grim events of Toba Fushimi came flooding back to me, making the hairs on my arms stand. Jesus. I feel that. At the end of the battle, even with almost triple the manpower that was brought by the Sacho, the shogunate army was humiliated and forced to retreat. A fact I'd imagine that had not left Hijikata-san easily. Well, maybe if victory isn't assured, then it would be better for us not to fight in this battle.
戦で勝たねえ限り、俺たちに上がり目はねえからな。このままじゃ、ろくに戦わねえうちに幕府側が負けちまわねえとも限らねえ。
なるほど。まあそうだよな。
Nova, what?
負けるとしても、できるだけこっちの被害は軽くするつもりだ。お前らは、その後の再起の支度をしておいてくれ。
8.
松本先生と協力して、ありったけの銃と銃弾を集めておくんだ。できるな。
Oh, we're on a mission to gathering guns and ammunition, alright.
ああ、わかった。つうか土方さんってほんと転んでもただじゃ起きねえ人だよな。
Heisuke raised an excellent point. Ever since her defeat at Toba Fushimi, Hijikata-san had gained a wiser head, a greater sense of cunning. He never seemed too optimistic nor too cynical. Do number 8. It seemed the bitter memory of Toba Fushimi was enough to keep him on his toes, and it was reflected in his leadership. However, there was something I'd wondered. After a pause, I told Hijikata-san what was on my mind. Hijikata-san, do you need me to join in the march to Kofu with all of you guys?
お前はここにいろ。さっきも言ったが、今回の戦には勝てねえかもしれねえ。ま、ここも安全とは言い切れねえがな。
なんだよそれ。
Yes, Nova. I have not. Why?
俺たちじゃこいつを守りきれねえってことか？ひでえこと言ってくれるよな。
Which side of Doki Doki Literature Club, Nova? Both! Jesus fucking Christ. If I wanted psychological horror, I'd play Higurashi, thanks.
別にお前の力を疑ってるわけじゃねえさ。
Then again, if I play Higurashi, it's a lot of reading.
近頃、江戸市中に辻斬りが出るって噂があるんだ。
Murders?
それ俺も聞いたことあるぜ。夜出歩いてるやつが老若男女問わず殺される事件が立て続けに起こってるってんだろ。
Holy shit. Dan, what?
ああ、俺も現場を見てきたが、ひでえもんだったぜ。
Hold on, I need to say this out loud. Milk outside a bag of milk outside a bag of milk. Sequel to milk inside a bag of milk inside a bag of milk. Oh god. Wait. Anyway. I have zero clue on this one.
仏さんは元の形がわからねえほどめった切りにされちまってるときた。今日にいた頃似たような話を聞いたことはねえか。
ひょっとして三男さんの。
証拠はねえがな。
Back during our stint in Kyo, Sanan-san, who led the Fury Corps, became notorious for slaughtering outlaw Ronin under the facade of pursuing justice during his nighttime patrols. Even slaughtering seems like a tame description, given that the victims were maimed and dismembered beyond recognition, a truly gruesome sight. But this time, the victims aren't just Ronin outlaws, but civilians in Edo, right? I don't think Sanan-san would go that far.
証拠はねえって言っただろうが。だが万一の備えはしておくべきだろう。今話したことは三男さんには絶対に言うんじゃねえぞ。
Sure, go ahead. Actually, I'll be right back because I have no water. I've run out. I have water! We're fine now. We're fine. Well, of course.
平介、お前は留守中、三男さんから絶対に目を離さねえようにしろ。ついでに雪村のお守りもしとけ。いいな。
ああ、わかった。
Starting tomorrow, Heisuke, the Fury Corpse, and myself were all expected to remain at headquarters. I hope Ichigata-san's warnings were just that, warnings. But hope could only take me so far, and the feeling of dread in my stomach showed no signs of stopping. I was alone in my room, arranging my bedding on the night when everyone else had left for Kofu already. Footsteps creaked from the other side of my door. Huh? Whose footsteps could they have been? My curiosity began to get the better of me. I peeked my head out the door, and I walked down the hall in the direction of where I'd heard the footsteps. As I made my way outside of the compounds, I heard.
千鶴、こっちだ。
Heisuke quietly waved me over to join him, and I scurried over to hide where he had been sitting. Heisuke, what are you doing here?
羅刹隊の奴らの様子がおかしかったから、先回りしてここに隠れてたんだ。
Not this music, please, anything but this music. It's unsettling. Wait, so those footsteps I heard earlier were from the men in the Fury Corpse?
あいつらこれからどこかへ出かけるみてえだな。
What's Sun and Sun up to?
部屋で書き物をしてたのを見たぜ。
Does that mean they're acting independently? Like maybe he had nothing to do with this?
どうかな。まだわからねえ。それよりあいつらがシチューに出て何をするつもりなのかを確かめねえと。ついてこい、千鶴。俺の後ろを離れるんじゃねえぞ。
Will do. Together, Heisuke and I covertly kept in close step with the gang of Furies, leaving the compounds. Okay, creepy music is gone. After 10 minutes, we'd reached a stop when... Oh! A blood-curdling scream shrieked in the distance, followed by the grisly sound of flesh being split open. Oh no, it meant...
千鶴、急ぐぞ。
I sprinted after Heisuke, who burst into a run. By the time we arrived at the scene, it was too late. A lurid scattering of ripped flesh and limbs were sprawled across the blood-soaked street. Two ghastly furies, clad in white hair and a thick coat of blood, sadistically stabbed into the bodies of corpses lying helplessly along the stained pathway. With each horrific jab of their swords came the repulsive splatter of blood upon their mad faces. Despite Hijikata-san's warning that the victims were often left disfigured beyond recognition, one thing was clear. They were not soldiers. They were ordinary people.
お前ら、本当に血をすするためだけに不逞老士じゃない普通の町人を殺してやがったんだな。
I watched Heisuke's right fist tremble fiercely. I couldn't blame him. It was difficult to see his comrades resort to such abject depravity, becoming murderers to satiate their never-ending thirst for human blood. I'm surprised they're not in uniform, like proper Western uniform. One of the Furies turned to face Heisuke, and his blood-stained lips curled into a warped smirk. Madness, it seemed, had consumed them, leaving no trace of sanity behind their red, glowing eyes. All that remained was a primal urge festering within them to kill and drink the blood of their targets.
もう血に狂っちまってるな。生かしておくわけにはいかねえ。
With shaking hands, Heisuke unsheathed his sword, biting his lips nervously as he barked out at me.
千鶴、物陰に隠れてろ。いいって言うまで出てくるんじゃねえぞ。
But Heisuke!
わかったな。
Heisuke's bark was fast approaching a bite, and I made myself hidden as he ordered me to, but would he really be okay? Could he take on 2 of the Fury Corps by himself? Men that, up until today, had eaten, slept, and served alongside him nobly but as his allies? One of the Furies broke into a maniacal cackle. Then he leapt from the ground and lunged for Heisuke's throat. Heisuke nimbly evaded the Fury's strike, watching the path of its movements with relaxed ease. The Fury turned on its heel and slipped a little, giving Heisuke the perfect opportunity to make his move. Heisuke kicked at the ground and thrust his sword into the Fury's sternum, producing a gush of blood. The Fury yelped in pain and took a step back. It seemed Heisuke's blade hadn't pierced through any of its vital organs, so it still had the chance to heal. Before Heisuke could catch his breath, the other Fury, who had been waiting... Really on? The other Fury, who had been waiting for the opportune moment to pounce, charged at Heisuke. Heisuke swung his sword to parry the incoming attack, but he hadn't caught it fast enough. The blade cut his shoulder, tearing a wide cut into his flesh that spewed a stream of blood into the air. Heisuke!
ダメだ、来るんじゃねえ。
Despite bleeding profusely from the wound in his shoulder, Heisuke threw wild slashes at the Fury.
どうってことねえさ。これぐらいの傷ならすぐ塞がっちまうから。
Just as Heisuke claimed, the blood trickling down his shoulder stopped, and it seemed the wound was beginning to seal itself. But should he really be using those powers? As Sen mentioned, each instance of healing had potentially sapped away his precious lifespan. To make matters worse,
この往生際が悪いぞ、てめえら。
in spite of his best efforts, Heisuke struggled to land a vital blow on either of the Furies, swinging aimlessly at the vicious pair. I noticed the fatigue began to set in for Heisuke, which was only exacerbated by how frequently his opponents seemed to be regenerating their wounds. Maybe, just maybe, just as it seemed the situation had turned dire.
一体何を遊んでいる?
The bitch is here and I don't know why.
すんたらずの子犬といえど、この程度の相手に手こずるほどひ弱ではなかったはずだが。
That voice! When my mind registered whom it could have belonged to, the sight of a white blade glimmering spectacularly in the moonlight shined before my eyes. As the spectacle faded, the bloodshed continued. Cries cries of despair echoed eerily, one after the other. Each fury dropped to the floor, pools of blood forming under their stiff, lifeless bodies. There was no mistake. Ugh. Few beings in this world were capable of subduing a pair of furies as effortlessly as was done here. Certainly not if they were human.
風間、天霧、お前らどうしてここに？
The bitch is back! I'm not happy about it.
江戸市中の動静を探るためこうして足を運んだまでですが、
あのまがい者ども、貴様ら新選組が勝っている連中。なぜ奴らが辻斬りを働いているのだ？貴様らの命令か？
そんな命令するわけねえだろ。俺はあいつらを追ってきたんだよ。
Asuka shouted back, but Cosmo and Amagiri looked at him suspiciously.
江戸の町を騒がせている辻斬り事件は昨日今日始まったものではないと聞いています。
貴様は承知しておらぬとしても、あのまがい者の頭目、確か三男という名だったか。奴はこやつらが狼藉を働いていることを知っているのではないか。ヤセの女鬼に免じて貴様らに手出しはする。死に狂ったまがい者を野放しにしておくほど我々は寛容ではない。
5.
あなた方はもともと今日の治安を守るという役目を仰せつかっていたはずです。血を得るため江戸の人々を殺めることがあなた方の本意なのかどうか今一度考えてみては。
After saying their piece, both Kazuma and Amagiri vanished like mist into the darkness of the night. Violence!
分かってるよ、そんなことは。
Hesuke stared bitterly at the ground as he sheathed his sword back into its scabbard. How's your shoulder doing, Hesuke?
傷なら平気だよ。もう塞がっちまったから。それよりもさっき風間が言ってたことだけど。
You mean the fact that San is aware that his furies are butchering innocent people?
実際どうかはわからねえけど、三男さんって頭は回る人だからな。羅刹隊の奴らが豚書を抜け出して辻斬りを働いてたことに今まで気づかなかったはずがねえんだ。
Then...
とりあえず豚書に戻ったら本人に直接確かめてみよう。素直に答えてくれるかどうかはわからねえけどな。
For now, we had to escape the scene before anyone else could come around to pin the crime on us. What do we do with these bodies, Heisuke? A dim, melancholic expression formed on Heisuke's face.
ここに置いていくしかねえ。大服を着てねえから町の人に新選組大使だってことを気づかれることはねえはずだ。
Thank God I was having flashbacks to the first night in Kyo. Sokka. In this moment, I recalled my first night in Kyo, when I had been cornered by the group of Furies. Hijikata-san and the rest of the Shinsengumi men spoke nonchalantly, despite standing above the hair-raising display of corpses strewn across the alley. I gathered the impression that the Shinsengumi had grown accustomed to this kind of nauseating sight, especially as seasoned warriors, but Heisuke was different. Heisuke was different, and it seemed like this grim reminder of mortality was enough to unsettle his already fatigued state of mind. Oh. I mean, Cyberpunk isn't on the banned list, so it should be fine so long as I turn off or turn. You know what I mean. I can't have the words in my head. Watching his lips curl into a frown made me worried that his well-being was at risk. There was something else too, I had wondered. Heisuke. I know that earlier Cosmo was just taunting you, but why did you hesitate before killing that fury?
あれは油断してただけだよ。あいつら素早かったからな。
Heisuke blushed, turning his gaze away from me, as if to prevent me from being able to read the truth in his eyes. Flying limbs. I still love the little knife emote. I love it.
そんなことより、ほら、戻るぞ。
Without another word, Heisuke spun around and walked back in the direction of our headquarters. His actions did little to convince me that I was wrong. But we made our silent walk home together. As soon as we'd arrived at the compounds, Heisuke immediately briefed Sanan-san on the entire incident. Emote extensions? Huh?
なるほど。羅刹隊の者が血を得るために辻斬りを働いていたと。うかつでしたね。彼らをもっと厳重に監視しておくべきでした。
三男さん、あんた本当に知らなかったのか。あんたほどの人があいつらがやってたことに気づかなかったなんてありえねえと思うんだけど。
Heisuke's words were stern, making his point clear.
買いかぶりすぎですよ。私は神でも仏でもありませんからね。不意をつかれることもあります。
Sanan-san's demeanor was cold and stoic. Whether his words were to be taken as truth, or if they were intentionally misleading, I would have had no way of knowing.
話はそれだけですね。では、私はそろそろ失礼させてもらいますよ。
With that, Sanan-san stood and returned to his room.
ごまかされちまったな。
No. Alright.
まあ、真正面から聞いて答えてくれる人だとは思ってなかったけどさ。
So, what are we going to do now? Luckily, the culprits behind those recent murders had already been dealt with, so if Sanan-san was telling the truth, we should have nothing to worry about.
三男さんを問い詰めるとしたら、言い逃れできねえよう現場を抑えるしかねえだろうな。
But is that something we could actually do?
わからねえ。とりあえず土方さんが戻ってくるまでは三男さんから目を離さねえようにしようぜ。
わかった。
さてと、もうすぐ夜も明けちまうし、そろそろ休むことにするか。さすがに眠くなってきちまった。
Please, let me prepare your bedding for you.
あのさ、千鶴。ありがとな。 三男さんのこととか羅刹のこととか、多分俺一人じゃ抱えきれなかったと思う。
Come on. There's no need to thank me. I'm more than happy to assist you. Oh, okay. After assuring him, I left Hesuke to sleep in his room, but my heart clung to his words of thanks, which sat warmly in my chest well into the start of the new day. Despite the predicament we were in, I felt very peaceful. Sure, do that. A few days after witnessing those murders in Edo, the suspicious activity seemed to have quieted down. Since that night, Sana-san had been on his best behavior, never seeming to stray too far from the compounds. Either or. Knowing all of it could have been a ruse, however, we continued to monitor him discreetly. While in the middle of preparing some of the dishes for supper, I snuck a cursory glance towards Sanan-san.
雪村君、私の顔に何かついていますか？
No, nothing like that.
体があるわけでもないのに、男の顔をチラチラと覗き見るのは感心しませんね。それとも何か気になることでもあるのでしょうか？
No, not really. I glanced over at Hesuke, hoping he would help me out of this awkward conversation.
こいつさ、きっと不安なんだよ。もしかしたら今日の飯が三男さんの口に合わねえんじゃねえかって。三男さんって舌が肥えてそうだろ。だからさ。
雪村君が作る食事を口にするのはこれが初めてではありませんが。
まあそれはそうだけどさ。
Oh, Jesus Christ! That's a lot of slots. Hesuke was doing his best to come up with a plausible excuse on the spot, but by virtue of either terrible improvisational skills, or the pressure of standing up to Sanan-san's intense scrutiny, Heisuke found it difficult to convince Sanan-san.
まあいいでしょう。それではいただきます。
Same here. いただきます。First of all, before all of the other soldiers had departed for Kofu, the dining room was normally a lively scene, full of hungry warriors antsy after a long day of training. Oh, Jesus! Damn. Eating dinner with everyone absent, save for myself, Heisuke, and Sanan-san, was silent to an unsettling degree.
腕を上げましたね、雪村君。この菜の花のごま和えですよ。絶品です。
Wow, thank you.
すっげえうまい。
Wait, that still says Keisuke-san. That's Heisuke talking. What the fuck?
新八さんも佐野さんも残念だったよな。こんなにうまいものを食えねえんだから。甲府に行ったみんなはちゃんと飯食ってんのかな。
Heisuke. That's Ichikata-san mentioned in his last conversation with both Heisuke and myself. Victory was not assured, and the campaign itself was becoming a bleak prospect to all of those in charge.
心配はいりませんよ。土方君はそういった手回しが得意ですからね。
まあそうだよな。あの人そういうところは手抜かりないし。今回は近藤さんが指揮を取るらしいから、負け戦なんてさせるわけねえよな。千鶴、ご飯のおかわりいいか？
Please give me a second. I'll get some for you right away. I stood up and walked to the container of rice, and I scooped a large portion into his bowl. Having him enjoy his dinner enough to ask for seconds made all of the effort I put in the kitchen worth it. Here you go. There are plenty of servings left, so please don't hold back.
お、ありがとよ。
Heisuke lifted his chopsticks to fill his mouth with a fresh serving of rice, but then he stopped himself. It was sudden, as if he'd remembered something urgent. What's the matter?
いや、こうやって飯だけで腹を満たすことができれば楽なのになって思ってさ。あ、ごめん。別に変な意味はねえんだ。
No, I'm the one who should apologize. I'm sorry if my question made things a little weird. The awkward silence in the room was deafening, and just as we craved something to break it,
ごちそうさまです。私はそろそろ失礼しますよ。
so soon? There's more food if you like.
さすがにこれ以上は食べられませんよ。私は食が細いもので。
Sana-san gathered his dishes delicately and stood up from his seat. Oh, please leave it there. I'll be collecting and washing them later anyway, so right there is fine.
いえ、これくらいなら自分でできますよ。君はゆっくりくつろいでいてください。他の大使がいるところだと何かと気詰まりでしょうからね。お互いに。
Sana-san left the conversation at that, punctuating his point with a quiet exit from the room. As soon as his footsteps were out of earshot, I turned to Heisuke and whispered to him. Sanan-san didn't seem to act any differently.
まあ、あの人は物事に動じねえたちだしな。俺たちが疑ってることも多分見抜いてるだろうし。
Ah.
さてと、ごちそうさま。俺全片付けてくる。
Oh no, let me. Why don't you get some sleep, Heisuke?
いいって。三男さんの様子を見てくるついでだし。お前はここで待っててくれ。よし。
Heisuke picked up a stack of plates and he left the dining room. I sat there patiently, twirling my hair playfully in my fingers before Heisuke returned to me. Welcome back. So, what was Sanan-san up to?
何か資料みてえなものを読んでたぜ。多分行動さんのところで見つけたやつじゃねえかな。
I see. You think that'll be enough to occupy him from going out tonight? Whether or not Sana-san had a hand in the Fury's murdering spree in Edo was something yet to be determined, but we could take solace that there would not be any murders tonight, assuming he was as busy within the headquarters as we expected.
どうだろうな。警戒しておくに越したことはねえんじゃねえ。
Well, I can see that ending in violence, Dan. You have a point. A car is going brrr. Still going brrr. And I'm turning the air on. I don't know what kind of violence, Dan, but you're gonna find out for us. Both of us let the subject of the conversation sink in, and from there a silence awkwardly hovered between us. The only sound around us was the busy chirps of insects. With more humidity and warmth came an influx of insects seeking refuge throughout our compound's vicinity.
なあ
What? Okay. What is it, Dan? Yeah. I want to know how it ends. Because now I'm curious. Huh? What is it, Hisuke?
お前こっちに戻ってきてからどこかに出かけたか
No, not really. In fact, I think the only chance I've had to leave the compounds was joining you and Sun to my home.
なんだよ久しぶりの故郷なんだしいろいろ見に行ってくればいいじゃないか
But what is there to do?
この間瓦版で読んだんだけどさ浅草の花屋敷ってとこすげえらしいぞ花がいっぱいあるんだってさ
Hanayashiki in Asakusa.
お前そういうの好きだろ
I'm quite fond of flowers, actually.
浅草なら近くに芝居小屋もあるし大使の誰かに頼んで連れてってもらえばいいんじゃね
That sounds lovely and all, but why do I have to ask one of the other warriors? Why can't you take me, Hisuke?
俺は
Hisuke's wide, tender eyes suddenly turned forlorn. After a moment, he laughed derisively.
バカだな行けるわけねえだろ俺夜しか出歩けねえし
Hisuke, what words of comfort could I offer him? Well, the guide says, you're the only person I want to go with, Hisuke. The only person I'd go with is you, Hisuke. The Hana Kayashiki, the theater, none of that would be as fun with anyone else. There's no way I'd allow myself to partake in all of that fun, knowing you'd be back at the compounds by yourself.
しずるそんなこと言ったってどうしようもねえだろ俺だってお前と一緒に
Heisuke immediately stopped himself mid-sentence, his voice trailing off before staring at the ground. This would be floor instead. God damn it.
いやなんでもね
His tone became cold and he tightened his fists. This conversation must have struck a nerve, and it seemed Heisuke hadn't wanted it to continue. Yet again, the room became silent, apart from the insect chirping outside of the dining room's window.
俺さあと何回こうやって夜を過ごすことができるんだろうな
Heisuke possessed an innocence that was slowly giving way to the burden of his gloomy predicament. Back then, he was so warm and jovial. All of that was beginning to slip away, which only tugged at my heartstrings with each passing day. I'm sure there are so many. Just look at Sun. It's been 3 years since he's become a Fury. And he's doing just fine. Even if they say that using your powers shortens your lifespan, then maybe it won't shorten as much as you think, Heisuke.
そうだといいけどな
At last he seemed to relax, and his lips curled into a timid grin. I wasn't sure if Heisuke was genuinely accepting my optimistic outlook or just humoring me. I wanted so badly for him to understand, but I acknowledged that all I could offer him were shallow words of encouragement. No matter how hard I tried, the source of his anguish was foreign to me. Okay. I took the hair clip out of my hair. Now my hair can be free from its bunness that it was in. There we go. My hair is free now. I gazed longingly at the stars scattered across the view from the window, and I made a wish. Please, don't let this night end so soon. The sun, the battlefield, or the passage of time itself. I just wish that the things that took Heisuke away from me were no longer an issue. That life would start to give more often than I'd like to take. That life would start to give more often than it'd like to take. And we're off to chapter 2! Water! Over 3 months passed since we'd welcomed spring, and the only communication we'd received was a single letter. The Shinsengumi, it read, had suffered an embarrassing defeat against the Imperial Army at Kofu Castle. Later on, this information had proved to be false, as the battle's verdict was yet to be determined. However, Hijikata made it clear to us that they were facing insurmountable odds, and that the conditions for victory were becoming increasingly unfavorable. We held our breaths, nervously waiting for any word of the safe return of our friends and comrades, until finally we had our answer.
ようやく着いたか。
今回ばかりはさすがに死ぬかと思ったぜ。
新八さん、佐野さん、無事だったんだな。ああ、見ての通りだぜ。
Wait, is it just the two of you who returned? Where are the rest of the men?
撤退するときバラバラになっちまったな。他の大使連中もそのうち戻ってくるはずだぜ。生きてるよな。ってことはやっぱり戦には
全部近藤さんがいけねえんだよ。あの人がいなきゃ負け戦にはならなかったはずなのにな。
俺も新八と同じ意見だ。今回ばかりはさすがに頭抱えちまったぜ。
Both Nagakura and Harada returned with angered spirits, visibly disturbed by what transpired. Okay, that's a way for that to go. I could only imagine what happened in Kofu.
平助、土方さんはもう戻ってきてるのか。まだだけど、甲府で何があったのか一応三男さんに知らせておいた方がいいんじゃないかな。三男さんも戦のことは気になってるはずだから。だな。そうするか。
Nagakura and Harada both slumped, sighing in unison as we made our way to Sanan-san's study. Oh.
なるほど。状況はよくわかりました。
The events of Kofu were recounted in painstakingly elaborate detail by both Harada and Nagakura. Their side of the story, to our surprise, described a scene far worse than Hijikata-san originally anticipated. Kondo-san insisted on spending a prolonged period of time in Hino, his hometown, delaying their convoy's arrival to Kofu Castle. Alright. As a result, the Imperial Army beat our troops there and swept through the site, fortifying the castle before our men were anywhere near the battlefield. If this hadn't presented enough of a disadvantage, the Sacho utilized the same weaponry that handily crushed our forces at Toba Fushimi. Realizing that we may have been marching straight to their deaths, Nagakura and Harada pleaded with Kondo-san in order to order a mass retreat. However, Kondo-san flat out refused, confusing their concern with cynicism. This act of negligence came at the most heinous of costs, leading to the deaths of hundreds of our men serving with his ill-advised command.
もうあの人とはやっていけねえよ。近藤さんは大将の器じゃねえ。
One!
ああ、あの調子で指揮を取られたんじゃ命がいくつあっても足りねえぜ。
別に新選組にいなきゃ薩長と戦えねえってわけでもねえしな。
Both Heisuke and I looked at one another in surprise as soon as Nagakura had said that. Full disclosure. Surely Nagakura and Harada wouldn't leave.
早まらないでくださいと言いたいところですが、すでに心が離れている人を無理に引き止めることもできませんね。お好きにどうぞ。ただ無断でここを出ていくことだけは控えてくださいね。
After offering his counsel, Sanan-san nodded curtly and left for his room.
新八さん、本当に出ていくつもりなのか？
一応近藤さんが戻ってきた後話はするつもりだけどな。
佐野さんも近藤さんたちには世話になったし、恩返しして気持ちはあるんだが、これから先もあんなことを繰り返されたんじゃ大使連中にも申し訳ねえしな。
Despite the legitimacy of their concerns, their departure was dependent on Kondo-san's willingness to hear them out. It seemed their hearts were set, and no matter of goodwill or nostalgia could convince them otherwise.
エスケ、お前も俺たちと一緒に来ねえか？
Oh! That's a loaded question, Nagakura.
はっきり言っちまっていいんだぜ。飲みたくもねえ落ち水を飲まされて羅刹になんてされちまって、さすがにもうあの人たちには付き合いきれねえだろ。
このままここにいたらどんな無茶を言いつけられるか分かったもんじゃねえしな。
俺
Their invitation to leave clearly struck a nerve with Heisuke, who found himself in a position he had likely never anticipated. His gaze trembled slightly, as if he struggled to find a solid answer, and then he pursed his lips.
気持ちだけ受け取っとくよ。平助、お前。二人とも誤解してるみてえだけど、俺無理やり落ち水を飲まされたわけじゃねえから。死にそうになった時、三男さんにどうしても生き延びてえかどうか聞かれて、あの薬を飲むって決めたのは俺だから。近藤さんたちのせいじゃねえ。それに羅刹になっちまった俺が新選組を離れるなんてできるはずねえだろ。
そんなの俺が土方さんに掛け合ってどうにでもしてやるって。
いいんだ。あの時せっかく拾った命だから、この命で何ができるのか、ここでもう少し考えてみてえから。
Neither Nagakura nor Harada seemed pleased with his response, both of them scanning him intently.
たくお前は頭が足りねえくせに妙に一本気っつうか。それ佐野さんにだけは言われたくねえぞ。
何言ってやがんだよ。せっかく誘ってやったのに俺たちの恋を足毛にしやがって。
まあこんな白状者のことはさっさと忘れちまおうぜ。勝手に一人でくたばりやがるってんだ。ひってえ言い草だな。なんなんだよもう。
ところで千鶴ちゃん、なんか食うものねえか。ずっと荒木同士だったから腹が減っちまったよ。
Oh, just 1 second. There are plenty of leftovers from supper, so allow me to prepare them for you.
気が利くじゃねえか。当然酒もついてるんだよな。
No, no sake.
なんだよ、固いことは一個なしだろ。せっかく生きて帰ってこられたんだし。そうそう、ちょっとぐらいならいいじゃねえか。
You too, Hesuke?
こうやって新発さんたちと飲めるのも今のうちだけかもしれねえんだしさ。
As much as I hated to admit it, Heisuke raised a good point that made it difficult to refuse. Fine, but just a little, okay? I think everyone's a little bit on edge, so the last thing I want to do is cause any trouble.
ありがとうよ、千鶴。
Heisuke, Harada, and Nagakura drank well into the wee hours of the morning, laughing boisterously over memories between all of them. On the surface, it was an endearing sight, but I couldn't help but notice the veneer of happiness spread thinly over their conversation, as each of them knew it may very well be their last together. In fact, Heisuke seemed keenly aware of this, offering a sly, pensive glance from time to time. By the next afternoon, some of the other men arrived. Kondo-san, Hijikata-san, Saito, and Soma all returned with their respective troops, and the mood was hushed all around the compounds. Nagakura was quick to approach Kondo-san, hoping to schedule the meeting in which all of his grievances could be properly aired. We waited patiently to see how it turned out when...
そんじゃあみんな世話になったな。他の奴らにもよろしく伝えといてくれ。
So you weren't able to come to a resolution with Kondo-san, huh?
ああ、あの人があそこまで石頭だとは思わなかったぜ。
まあ、石頭はお互い様だろうがな。
お二人がいなくなると寂しくなります。
本当だよな。長倉さんたちには世話になったもんな。夕飯のおかずを取られたり、稽古で散々叩きのめされたり、面倒な雑用を押し付けられたり。
おう、野村、お前も随分皮肉がうまくなったじゃねえか。最後に一発忘れられねえ思い出を作ってやろうか。ああ、
いりませんよ、暴力反対。
そういえば雪村君、東堂君の姿が見えませんが。
Shibata glanced inquisitively around the room. I invited him to join us for the send-off, but all Heisuke said was, "Don't worry about me," and then he left it at that. If you would like, I'd be happy to summon him.
いや、必要ねえさ。別にこれが根性の別れってわけでもねえしな。
But
いいんだよ。あいつに言ってやりてえことは全部夕べのうちに言ったつもりだし。
are you sure about that?
ああ、同じお天道様の下で戦ってりゃ、そのうちまた会えるさ。
I'd hoped that Harada was right, but the sorrow in our parting was anything but sweet. Well, safe travels to you two.
おう、それじゃあな。近藤さんたちのことよろしく頼むぜ。
Nagakura and Harada grinned warmly, seemingly at peace with the decision to move on with their lives. Without another word, they turned their backs to us and walked out of the front gate. As I watched them disappear into the horizon, a feeling of melancholy sat in the pit of my stomach. Although the answer to how much longer Heisuke had to live on account of his affliction was unknown, I still clung to the hope that one day the three of them would reunite, no longer burdened by the troubles that seemed determined to tear them apart. Above us, there was water. No. Okay. Above us, the sun was setting, covering the sky with a gorgeous array of orange hues.
あれ
Heisuke awoke from his slumber, stumbling clumsily into the recently vacant room. You just missed Nagakura and Harada's goodbye.
そっか。なんつうかあっけないな。
You should have been here to see them off.
いや、必要ねえよ。一生の別れってわけじゃねえし。縁があれば、また会うこともあるだろうしな。
Strangely enough, Heisuke echoed the same sentiment shared by Harada only moments earlier. Perhaps the truth that none of them had any way of truly knowing whether or not they would live to see one another again was a pain not worth admitting. Instead, they chose to look forward optimistically. A valiant effort, of course, but one that I feared would never come to fruition. Nah, Heisuke, do you really think you made the right choice with not going with Nagakura and Harada? Although the secret that Heisuke was alive, let alone had become a fury, was unbeknownst to the public, I was sure that if Heisuke had wanted to, Hijikata-san would entertain the option of him leaving the Shinsengumi favorably.
ああ。俺はここでやらなきゃならねえことが残ってるから。
Like what? Heisuke went silent, pondering to himself as he scratched the bridge of his nose.
ある人のことが心配なんだ。あのまま新八さんたちと一緒に新選組を出ちまったら、そいつのことを見捨てることになっちまうから。そうなったら俺、きっと死ぬまで後悔すると思う。
Passion glowed in his wide, tender eyes. Staring deeply into them made my chest tighten for some reason, like my heart had been beating twice as fast. Surely the person Heisuke had been worried about was... me? I thought about whom it could have been, and although I may have been overthinking things, something hit me. I recalled an intimate conversation we shared as we left Osaka Bay, following the events of Toba Fushimi. Between joining the Guardians of the Imperial Tomb, leaving the Shinsengumi, and drinking the Water of Life, I choose number 5. It was a period of change, reflection, and unforeseen consequences for Heisuke, but he confided in me that my presence gave him the confidence to see through it all. Sweet dreams! So logically, I thought it must have been... the person you're talking about... is it me?
いや、俺はそんな...
Oops. Sorry, that was wrong of me to assume. Right? How could it be me, of course? My deepest apologies. I think I may have gotten ahead of myself. How embarrassing.
いや、違わねえし。
Ooh. Yay, mini stories! Heisuke's cheek turned deep red, and he cupped his mouth with his hands almost immediately. He stood frozen to the spot, and for a moment, an awkward, ear-shattering silence filled the room. Well then... So, I was right, wasn't I? The person you're worried about is me. Heisuke scratched timidly at his rosy cheeks, looking extremely uncomfortable as I continued to press the subject until...
おう、まあそういうことだよ。
But why in the world are you worried about me? I'm not going through anything near the level of what you're dealing with, Heisuke.
俺は別にいいんだよ。男だし戦えるしさ。新選組にも自分で望んで入隊したんだし。でもお前は違うだろ。
Heisuke. Heisuke had always acted so selflessly. His thoughtful gestures, though flattering, made me feel a tad guilty as he never put himself first. For now, expressing my gratitude would have to do. Thank you, Heisuke. Your concern means the world to me. Heisuke's gentle disposition was unlike anyone I had ever met before, a fact I cherished quite dearly.
そういや、三男さんは今どうしてるんだ?
You know, I haven't seen him since last night.
本当か? まさか勝手にどこかへ出かけてるんじゃねえだろうな。俺ちょっと様子を見てくる。
Are you going to be okay by yourself?
ガキ扱いするなよ。じゃあちょっくら行ってくるから。
Heisuke had one foot out of the door when... Ladies and gentlemen, we have reached round 3. He slammed to his knees, desperately moaning in pain. I was waiting for you to say something, Dan. His hair began slowly turning white, and his eyes were burning savagely with a fiery crimson. Heisuke? Was this bloodlust?
やっぱりあの二人についていかなくて正解だったかもな。
And say this with me now. We give him blood. I knew that offering him my fresh blood would be enough to soothe his excruciating pain. Without a second to hesitate, I unsheathed my kodachi as Heisuke clawed at his chest uncontrollably. Oh, I see. It still works, though. I grimaced as I slid the cold steel across my wrist. Heisuke, drink my blood.
だけど、そんな。
This doesn't hurt me. Just please, for my sake. After giving it a moment of I'm sorry, seeing the knife threw me off. The knife emote. Give me a second. Okay. After giving it a moment of thought, Heisuke wrapped his soft, moist lips around my bleeding wound. He muttered to himself sheepishly, sucking the blood from my cut in a gingerly manner. Don't think about that right now. Just focus on getting better. Heisuke nodded curtly, facing his head downwards as he sucked with more vigor. What? After a few minutes, Heisuke's breathing began to steady itself, and the pressure of his mouth lessened. Look at that. Your complexion looks better already. Heisuke averted his gaze bashfully, perhaps stuck in a thought loop about his internal dilemma.
お前大丈夫なのか？俺に血なんて飲ませて立ちくらみとかしてねえか？
Nope, this is nothing. All that matters to me is that I'm able to be there for you when you need me. Heisuke fell silent, nervously biting into his lower lip while thinking of something to say. Oh.
俺三男さんの様子を見てくる。
He shot up from the floor, then disappeared from the room as if the place had caught on fire. The Shinsengumi were preparing to depart from Edo, passing through Nagarayama. Meh. Though, the massive laugh lines. See, now you just made me remember one of my voice actors, Josh, and the last part of Ties of Fates. He just sent me a bunch of laughs because I had his character laugh maniacally. There were so many takes. It still haunts me to this day. But it haunted me to the point where my brain translated it somehow into the Ohime laugh for his character, and I ended up drawing his character in a dress. The Shinsengumi were preparing to depart from Edo, passing through Nagarayama to arrive eventually in Aizu. God damn it. Dan. The news came not too long after the departure of Nagakura and Harada, whose absence still resonated solely with those of us still faithful to the Shinsengumi. Word of our eventual departure to Aizu came rather unexpectedly, leading to the frantic scramble of many warriors hurriedly preparing for a mass migration. I too did my part before it came time to leave.
あれ、千鶴、どこかに出かけるのか?
I noticed we were short on medical supplies and our stock of medicines, so I wanted to fetch some before we moved to Nagarayama.
そっか。そんじゃ俺も一緒に行ってやるよ。
I mean, are you sure?
いいって。ここにいても雑用言いつけられるだけだしな。それに。
Heisuke snuck an inquisitive glance towards Sanansan's room, nudging his nose off to the side. 6.
今は土方さんもいるし、三男さんも勝手な真似はできねえだろう。
Good point. Then I'd love for you to join me.
おう、ちょっと待っててくれ。すぐに支度してくるから。
After making the rounds of the shops, we'd finally assumed what we needed for our medical stock. We finally amassed what we need for our medical stock, and we leisurely strolled back towards the compounds. Oh! Commotion rumbled on the other side of the street, with crowds of people chanting, "Isn't it great? Isn't it great?" with great fervor.
しかし、まさかこんなに急いで江戸を出ることになるなんて思わなかったよな。
Oh.
俺たちこれからどうなるんだろうな。土方さんは会津に行くって言ってたけど、会津での戦には勝てるのかな。
Until recently, our safety under Hijikata-san's dutiful leadership had never been called into question. But after suffering back-to-back defeats at both Toba Fushimi and Kofu, things were beginning to change. Would we, as Heisuke put it, realistically have any chance of victory in Aizu? Perhaps more pertinently, did Heisuke have any more desire to fight, especially all the way in Aizu? As we passed a dim alley, Heisuke blurted out,
まずい。千鶴、隠れるぞ。
Heisuke yanked my arm, leading me behind a building from which we slowly peeked our heads. Footsteps echoed ominously in the alley. By the sound of their pace, it was a man and a woman. Was it a rendezvous or something else?
たく、お師匠さんも無茶言ってくれるよな。
Hold on a second. I knew I recognized a name in the fucking credits. And it's hers.
じゃないか踊りしてる連中の姿を100枚素書きして持ってこいなんてさ。
でも勉強になるでしょ。
そりゃな。だけど踊ってる奴らに絡まれるといろいろ面倒なんだよ。あいつら金持ちの家に上がり込んで家の中をめちゃくちゃにしたりするって聞くしな。
うちは別に心配ないじゃない。盗まれるものなんて一つもないし。
Did she just say our home? Oh.
もし商売道具を持っていかれたらどうすんだよ。紙だって絵の具だってただじゃないんだぞ。
Heisuke stared intently at the couple in conversation until the two of them were well beyond earshot. He widened his eyes in astonishment before muttering strangely under his breath.
龍之介のやつ元気だったんだ。しかも一緒にいた子は。
Dan, what? Do you know them?
あ、まあ知り合いっつうかそんな感じだったんだ。
Then shouldn't you have said hello? We aren't going to be in Edo for much longer. You may never get the chance to do so again. The music is quite loud. Oh god.
いいんだ。俺はもう死んだ人間だし。せっかく幸せそうにしてんのに、今さら俺たちのことを思い出させるなんて野暮じゃねえか。
Heisuke's mood completely soured, sort of how I imagine his reaction to be when Nagakura and Harada announced their departure from the Shinsengumi. But this was different. Whatever inner turmoil he'd kept hidden beneath the skin was now exposed, and for once, Heisuke seemed utterly vulnerable. As if the burden he'd been carrying for so long had finally become too much to bear. Heisuke inhaled deeply through his nose and closed his eyes, pausing for a moment before releasing his exhale through his mouth.
あいつさ、まだ新選組にいた頃は芹沢さん、局長の一人だった人に毎日殴られてて、ここを出たらどうやって生きていけばいいのかわからないなんて言ってて、自分の生き方を見つけられずにあがいてたところが司令官に流れ着く前の俺みたいで、なんか放っておけなかったんだけど、あいつちゃんと自分の道を見つけられたんだな。すっげえ幸せそうだった。
I noticed something peculiar as soon as Heisuke mentioned the words, smiling from ear to ear. Suddenly, a dreary expression covered Heisuke's face, as if he were a child who'd been abandoned to wander through the city alone. Heisuke, keeping his back facing me, continued to reminisce.
きっとあいつらこれから先もさ、二人で苦労していくんだろうな。いや、好きな相手と一緒にいられるんだから、どんなに苦労してもどうってことねえか。あと数年も経てば可愛い子供が生まれたりすんのかな。
Oh, Heisuke! Saying that those two will have a kid or two. They're adorable. Oh my god, the thought of that.
子供もそのうちどんどん大きくなって、じいさんばあさんになる頃にはたくさんの孫に囲まれてさ、俺はそんな幸せなんて多分絶対手に入れられねえけど。
Heisuke watched his friend rise from humble beginnings to forge a meaningful life for himself outside of the Shinsengumi. Well, he's thinking about the couple that just passed us. They've known each other for 5-6 years now. And he knows this fact. He's like, oh shit, they're together. Oh shit, they might have kids. Oh shit, their kid might grow up. Oh shit, their kids might have kids, therefore making the couple grandchildren. And this is things that he thinks he's not going to be able to have. And now he's a sad boy. Yet here stood Heisuke, keenly aware of all that he would stand to miss because of his affliction, unable to partake in the greeting of an old friend. Simple pleasures and milestones alike were becoming increasingly out of reach for Heisuke, who was forced to watch the world turn without him. How much more anguish would he be forced to endure? It tore me apart seeing him like this, so I quietly nestled up closely to him. There was something so comforting and familiar about his scent. You have me. Even if one day everyone else were to disappear, I would still be here right beside you, Heisuke. His back shivered as I ran the tips of my fingers against it.
バカだなお前。俺いつ寿命を使い果たしちまうかわからねえんだぞ。そんな俺と一緒にいたっていいことなんてなんもねえだろ。
His tone was derisive. That much I could tell. But it was a reaction that had not required explanation. I'm not staying with you because I expect to gain something from it. Perhaps there was a hint of truth to his cynical claim that it was unlikely he would live for much longer. Perhaps he had interpreted my concern for him as pity, and he had given up fighting the inevitable. Nonetheless, I was determined to support Heisuke. Whether or not he could take his sentiment at face value was for him to decide, but
本当物好きだよなお前って。
At the beginning of our conversation, Heisuke's voice was meek and quivering, but by the end, it seemed he turned a corner, sharing with me a playful grin. A breast-gentle air rattled wind chimes around the compounds on the Shinsengumi's last night in Edo. A knock upon my door startled me around midnight.
雪村先輩、まだ起きてらっしゃいますか?
Solma, is that you? Oh, I'm awake. Is everything okay?
来客です。何でも先輩にお聞きしたいことがあるとかで。
Me? A visitor? Who could it have been? I'm gonna guess it's Sen and Kimigiku. Understandably, I was a little confused, and I cautiously followed Soma to greet my surprised guest.
あ、千鶴さん。夜分遅く申し訳ありません。
It's Kimigiku! What's going on, Kimigiku? I heard you had something to ask of me.
姫様があなたの招きに応じてこちらにいらしているはずですが、いつまで経ってもお戻りにならないので、何かあったのではと思いまして。
Ah, shit. What? You are mistaken. I haven't sent any message to Sen.
それは本当ですか？今日の夕刻、姫様は松本先生を通じてあなたからの文を受け取ったはずなのですが。
What? Are you sure? I've sent no letter for Sen.
ということは、何者かがあなたの名を語って。
Someone. But there are only a few people who are aware of Sen's presence in Edo, or even about her connection with Matsumoto Sensei, isn't that right?
ええ、あなた方と松本先生以外にはお伝えしていないはずです。
So, that means the only other people who know about her whereabouts are myself, Heisuke, and Sanan-san. Wait a minute. That's right. Sanan-san was with us. Sanan-san was with us the day we encountered her. He was fully aware of how to reach Sen and where she would be. Just then.
あれ、千鶴、それに確か君菊さん。
Heisuke stepped into the quiet courtyard, perhaps overhearing our nervous voices increasing in volume. Heisuke? Where's Sanan-san?
三男さんなら部屋で本を読んでるはずだけど。
Kimigiku, wait here. I'll go check up on him. I ran hurriedly towards Sanan-san's room, squinting my eyes to make out the hallway through the darkness. When I got to his door, there was no sign of him. It was too late. It seemed he had snuck out of the compounds without any of us noticing.
千鶴、どうだった？三男さんいたか？
I couldn't find him in his room.
ってことはまさか。
すぐに行方を追いましょう。
嫌な予感がします。
Wanting not to waste a second more, Kimigiku, Heisuke, and I bolted in search of Sanan-san. The nerve of him to forge my name in order to trick Sen into coming to meet him. Just what could Sanan-san have been plotting? A creeping sense of dread took a hold of me. All I could plead was for Sen's safety to be ensured, a hollow gesture, but what else could I do? After a frustrating yield of no results, the three of us split up to widen our search, but...
くそ、見つからねえな。三男さんどこに行っちまったんだ。
Darn, it's almost time for us to meet back with Kimigiku.
そうだな。見つけてくれるといいんだけど。
Just as Heisuke mentioned the thought, a violent gust appeared out of nowhere, forming into a tall whirlwind. And then, Kimigiku stepped from out of the gust.
お二人ともいかがでしたか？姫様の足取りはつかめましたか？
Unfortunately not. Were you able to find anything at all, Kimigiku?
私の方も手がかりを見つけ出すことはできませんでした。
You feel like you have a different persona for each driven streamer you watch? It's possible. Heisuke, can you think of anywhere, any place at all that he might have possibly gone to?
そう言われてもな。
I have an idea in my head where he could have gone, but I don't know if Chizuru will realize it.
あの人のことだから俺が予想できるような場所に行くってことはねえんじゃねえかな。
Oh no. Suddenly the panic began to feel very, very real. Whatever purpose Senasan had for questioning Sen was alarming, but for him to do so in this manner... So then what is it for me then, Dan? Was all of it a ploy to obtain more crucial information on the Furies from her? That seemed unlikely, given that he hadn't needed to approach her secrecy for a reason like that. Well, I don't know. After a moment, Kimigiku locked eyes with us.
お二人ともひとまず屯所に戻られてはいかがでしょう。
そうだな。もしかしたら三男さんが戻ってきてるかもしれねえし。
Where are you off to from here, Kimigiku?
私はもう少し姫様の行方を探してみます。姫様はあなたや風間千景と同じ純血の鬼ですから、人間やまがい物に遅れを取ることはないでしょうが。
Dan, put the knife away.
万が一ということもありますから。もし何かあればすぐにお伝えします。それでは。
Please be careful, Kimigiku. Kimigiku smiled graciously at me in return. With that, she vanished into the ether, leaving a mist-like cloud in her wake.
千姫、早く見つかるといいな。
Both of us nodded in unison, and we turned around to head back in the direction of the compounds. As we made our arrival, Heisuke blurted aloud.
おい、千鶴、見ろ！あそこに立ってるのは。
I glanced in the direction to which Heisuke was pointing at. Lo and behold, there stood Sen and Sanan-san. The two of them appeared to be engaged in a heated argument, but it was difficult for us to overhear.
何を話してるんだ。もう少し近づいてみるか。
Heisuke and I tiptoed as quietly as humanly possible. We were just within range of hearing them when Sen suddenly shot an inquisitive glance in our direction, catching us both by surprise. Before either of us had a chance to react, Sana-san took advantage of her being distracted, forcefully grabbing a hold of her to draw her in. What we witnessed next was completely unexpected. What? Oh god, what has Sana-san done? What is going on? Okay. I didn't expect this. Sana-san fiendishly planted his mouth upon Sen's, forcing her into an unwanted aggressive kiss. Such an egregious act had bewildered me without question, and I stood frozen to the spot. Sen attempted to force Sana-san back, struggling to put any distance between the two of them, much less to break free from the clutches of his face. However, because of his fingers firmly gripping her arm, she was unable to free herself at all. After the painfully uncomfortable moment, Sana-san had finally separated himself from Sen. As Sen was caught in a violent coughing fit, I saw thick red beads drip from out of her mouth. Uh-oh. Was that blood? Oh no, please, anything but that. Sana-san turned to face us and plastered across his face with a mischievous grin that made my hair stand.
おや、東堂君に雪村君、どこかにお出かけでしたか。それともわざわざ見届けに来てくれたのでしょうかね。彼女が挫折となる様を。
You bastard! You fucker! Why? For what reason?
挫折だって。三男さん、あんたまさか落ち水を。
正確には違いますね。私はもう落ち水など必要とはしていません。この私の体を流れる血そのものが落ち水と化しているのですから。私の血を与えれば人は羅刹となり、私が下したどんな命令にでも従うようになる。
Fuck.
だって。
私はもはやただの羅刹ではありません。人の世のノリにとらわれることなく血を求め続けた結果、羅刹を超える羅刹となったのです。
I had no idea whether or not Sana-san had been telling the truth, but behind his nefarious eyes was an insanity that I had never seen in any previous encounter with a fury. Sen, stay strong! I tried sprinting over to Sen in an effort to check up on her, but Sana-san had other ideas.
彼女に気安く触れることは許しませんよ。北の地に築く我ら羅刹の国の名手となってもらう身ですからね。
Did he just say future queen? of their Fury Kingdom. Oh my god, son and son. What the fuck? A Fury Kingdom?
そうです。比類なき力を持った純血の鬼さえもこの私の前に膝を屈した。彼女の存在は千の言葉を尽くすより雄弁に我々の力を物語ってくれるでしょう。
He did? What? Son on son. Don't tell me you've tainted Sen for the selfish reason of trying to prove how powerful Furies are!
そんなこととはご挨拶ですね。人より鬼より優れた我々がこの国を滑るものとなる。これ以上に崇高な目的があるとでも。
三男さん、あんたおかしくなっちまったんじゃねえのか。
私は至って正気ですよ。まあ理解してもらおうとは思いませんがね。
Heisuke unsheathed his katana out of frustration. The blade trembled in his shaky hands.
そんなことさせるわけにはいかねえ。力ずくでもあんたを止めてみせるぜ。
止めるですって。報道君、君がそこまで愚かだとは思いませんでしたよ。君ごとき左手だけでも叩き伏せることができますが、せっかくですからあなたの力を試させてもらいましょうか。
For Heisuke, number 8.
姫君、出番ですよ。そこの二人を殺しなさい。
Sanan-san's eerie eyes glowed frighteningly, and he gestured to an increasingly fervent Sen. Why is that so fitting right now?
誰あんたなんかの命令を。
Despite Sanan's best efforts, Sen retained some of her autonomy. 10. Sen retained some of her autonomy, wincing through gritted teeth. Her thick head of hair was damp with sweat, which dripped down her forehead and onto her chin. Resisting Sanan-san's orders was no mean feat, a sight made all too clear by Sen's disheveled appearance. Why is that also fitting?
まだ正気を保っているとはなかなか気丈な方ですね。さすが純血の鬼だけある。これはしつけがいがあるというものです。あっさりと従ってくれた彼らとは違ってね。
Oh my. Sanan turned his head and glanced suggestively at us. Just then, peeking through the darkness were dozens of tiny red eyes gazing at us. We were surrounded. They were everywhere, atop the roof of the compounds, besides shadows on the wall and within the mansion. Hasana-san had been able to hide, let alone recruit so many Furies, utterly baffled me, and each instance of eyes appearing petrified me into a state of shock.
なんだよこいつら。羅刹隊にいた奴らは風間たちの襲撃を受けた時や鳥羽伏見の戦。それからこの間の騒ぎでほとんど死んじまったはずだよな。 三男さん、あんたまさか江戸の人たちを。
力を与え人を超える生き物に生まれ変わらせてあげたのですよ。
Sanansan's eyes glimmered eerily behind his thick frames, grinning in pride as he admitted his act. For him, there was nothing to apologize for, as apparently all along it had been his intention to infect the world with this vile affliction.
ずっと思ってた。三男さん、あんたはすげえ人だって。甘っちょろい俺とは違って、何を残して何を切り捨てるべきか、情を交えず正しい判断を下せる。新選組を大きくしていくためには絶対に必要な人だって。だけどこんなやり方だけは何があっても絶対に認められねえ。
Heisuke was enraged, fighting back tears as he spewed all of his pain at Sanansan.
俺たちは上洛してから5年間ずっと今日の人たちを守ってきたんだろう。あんたは新選組幹部だった頃の志まで捨てるつもりなのかよ。
Heisuke's incensed screaming made me flinch nervously, but Sanansan barely even lifted his eyebrows.
忘れてしまいましたよ、人であった頃のことなど。何の役にも立たない情など、君はこれから先もずっと抱えて続けるつもりですか。
After delivering his icy retort, Sanansan turned once more to face Sen.
鬼の姫君に羅刹の白むくをまとってもらうにはしばしの時間が必要なようです。お色直しに少々時間をいただくとしましょうか。
待て三男さん。
Heisuke darted towards where Sanansan stood until a troop of vehement furies blocked his path.
くそ、お前ら邪魔するんじゃねえ。
Heisuke swung at them boorishly, hoping they'd fan away. However, the sheer volume of troops made navigating the path impossible, each of them returning Heisuke's angry gesture with baiting strikes and shoves. Heisuke! In the hopes of supporting Heisuke, I unsheathed my kodachi, but... For every fury hacked down by Heisuke, two more would instantly appear in its place. Sanansan watched Heisuke struggle with glee, sticking his tongue out as the pungent sting of blood filled the air. Once more, he turned to look at Sen. As their eyes locked, Sen's body suddenly went limp, and she dropped to the floor unconscious. Sanansan lowered himself, lifting her up to his shoulder.
それでは東堂君、生きていればまたお会いしましょう。君のその甘さを捨てない限り、何百回戦おうとこの私に勝利することはできないと思いますがね。
A wall of furies blocked our sight of Sanansan and Sen, creating an impenetrable blockade.
お前らどけよこら！あの二人を追いかけねえと！
Each swing of Heisuke's blade produced a lurid splatter of blood drenching him from head to toe. Don't let the blood get on you! If you get bloodlust, you'll...
無茶言うんじゃねえよ！これだけの数がいるのに！そっさー！俺はどうして！
Heisuke began to shriek out of frustration. The cacophony of his cold steel splitting flesh and cracking bones echoed throughout the courtyard. Heisuke fought virtually against the seemingly endless tide of furies, each one yelping as their lifeless corpses dropped to the ground. Soon it seemed everywhere we looked, dismembered limbs oozing with blood were scattered. The nauseating scent of blood had clung to every surface in sight, and Heisuke stood in the middle of it.
取り逃がしちまった。
Heisuke was bathed in blood, a grotesque image made worse by the inescapable feeling of failure.
ごめんな、千鶴。お前の友達助けてやれなくて。
I just shook my head. Don't worry about that. There wasn't much else I could say. All the Furies strewn across the blood-soaked ground, they lived ordinary lives. None of them were criminals or thieves or any number of epithets that perhaps are used to justify their needless suffering. Just innocent people whose ambitions and dreams were crushed by the will of one despicable being. And now, they had their lives taken at the end of Heisuke's sword, which still dripped with blood. It seemed impossible to believe this sentiment escaped someone so affable and kind-hearted as Heisuke.
俺もきっとそう遠くないうちにこうなるんだろうな。
Heisuke.
罪もねえ人間をこんなに殺して自分だけ死にたくねえなんて虫が良すぎるもんな。
Heisuke was determined to tear himself apart, one painful realization at a time. His shoulders were slumped, covered in a thin layer of film forming from the drying blood. Never had I seen him so disheartened by the act of killing. His heart seemed so heavy, worn by the unshakable guilt that his powers were more potent in taking lives than in protecting his own.
寿命を使い果たして死んだ後はやっぱり地獄行き間違いなしかな。
Just stop it! Stop talking, alright? I grabbed a hold of Heisuke's sleeve and interrupted his self-deprecating tirade. I began sobbing uncontrollably. Why did Heisuke, of all people in the world, have to suffer so much agony? No matter what anyone says to you, Heisuke, none of this is your fault. You know that more than anyone else. I understand this of you. So please, don't put all of the blame on yourself anymore.
千鶴。
Heisuke murmured my name once. Then together we basked in the silence, waiting for the dawn to erase this traumatic night from memory. Oh, we reached chapter 3 as soon as it turned 6 o'clock. That is time. Oh, I need to save the game. Let me 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 save the game. Alright. Okay. So, I guess I got what I wanted, a route that I didn't expect to go the way that it did. But here we are. Holy shit. I'm interested now. But tomorrow at 3 p.m. EST, we get to figure out how this ends. Hopefully, because we have 2 more chapters. God damn it, Dan. But with that, I will see you guys tomorrow. Yeah, tomorrow. There's no art stream today. I need to edit shit. I'm sorry. Editing comes a little bit more important than an art stream. So, yeah, I'll see you tomorrow. Please drink water. Have a nice day or night. And, goodbye!